Evan, my next guest, I'm going to ask him about all of the bin Laden stuff, but also some really interesting things happening with redistricting in Missouri. Joining me right now on the phone is our very own Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me back, Dana.
Of course. I obviously have to ask you your thoughts last night. This is going to be the question. Where were you when you learned that Osama bin Laden had been killed?
Yeah, I was getting ready to hit the hay and had the TV on, and I was just doing the fist pump like all other Americans were.
Yeah,
and,
it was.
And following it some on Twitter before I turned in.
And the story broke on Twitter. It was amazing. I couldn't even keep up with my Twitter stream. It was all happening so quickly.
Could I say God bless our Navy SEALs? They have the biggest hearts and the biggest capability of anyone. And you know what? If somebody like UBL wants to get acquainted with the 72 virgins, the SEALs will accommodate. They can make it happen right quick.
Although I think that the 72 virgins that are waiting for bin Laden, I don't know. I just don't think they're probably going to be what he imagines. I'm going to go on a limb and say.
In for a rude surprise there.
I want to ask you also about, there's some really interesting stuff has been happening with the redistricting in Missouri. There's been a lot of controversy about some of the stuff happening. And I know that my district, Missouri's 3rd district, would essentially be just gerrymandered away kind of, and it would pit Carnahan up against Clay. But now the proposed congressional redistricting map was rejected by Governor Jay Nixon. Can you give us a little insight as to what happened with this?
Yeah, it's always difficult to draw a map. It's made several orders of magnitude more difficult if you're losing a seat. And that's a discussion for another day. Why is Missouri, for the second time in 30 years, losing a seat? We're not keeping up with states that are growing faster, even though we've grown. But when the legislature has to draw a map for one fewer seat, which was our fate in Missouri, the task becomes that much more difficult. So, yes, you're right. Jefferson County, where I believe you grew up down there, is cut 3 ways. But counties have been split that way before. It was done 10 years ago when we were not losing a seat, not to Jefferson County, but to another county in the state. And one way to look at that is those folks are getting 3 members of Congress to represent their county. So it isn't all bad. Now, the legislature did the best they could, and the map that is supported by all but one of the incumbent members of Congress, that one being Representative Carnahan,
right?
Congressman Carnahan, and that map passed both House and Senate last week after months of difficult wrangling. And it went to the governor's desk, and in a sort of a surprise move that he did it this quickly, I did think he would veto it, but he vetoed it on Saturday morning or midday on Saturday, so just 48 hours ago. And now we are picking up the pieces. The legislature has 2 weeks from that veto, that is through the end of next week, which is the final day of the session, Friday the 13th, to act on that veto. We'll take a 2/3 vote of both the House and Senate to override the governor's veto. Veto overrides of governors are rare in Missouri history. I presided over 3 veto overrides. Governor Holden back in 2002, I believe. But until then, we had only had a half a dozen in 180 years of statehood.
Wow.
So we need 109 votes for the attempted override in the House. That's 2/3. And we're short 1 member because Representative Sally Faith was elected mayor of St. Charles last month, and she is no longer in the House. She'll be replaced at a special election later. So they still have to get 109 votes. That will not be easy to do in the House. It is a House bill, so the effort, Dana, to override the governor's veto will originate in the House of Representatives. I suspect it will not be this week. It could be this week, but I suspect it'll probably be early next week that they try it. Should the House succeed, Dana, it will go to the Senate, where I don't think there's any question they can override. They have 26 out of 34 senators are Republicans.
Right.
So I would expect the Senate, should the House be able to muster the votes, the Senate will follow and override the governor's veto.
Well, I'm when I look at this whole story about the redistricting, And I know I'll probably end up in Clay's district. He's not the guy that I would like to have represent me, but unfortunately, that's I think how things are going to go. So you think that this could possibly go on? You had said another week before we get.
Well, yes, but I mean, it's conceivable that House could muster the votes and bring it to the floor this week. But I would, if I were a betting man, I'd say it's better than 50-50. It's probably next week because you've got to see where they are.
Right.
They've got to count noses but again, the odds would be against a successful veto override just because in 190 years of statehood, they've been so rare.
Right. Well, we'll definitely watch and see what happens with this issue. A lot of people have been watching very closely, especially around the Kansas City area, too, because I know that there was a lot of back and forth about some of the proposed redistricting.
Here's what gets interesting. Both Congressman Clay and his counterpart, his African-American colleague on the western side of the state, Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, they want this map. So I suspect you're going to have Congressman Clay and Congressman Cleaver calling their Democratic members of the House and urging them to vote yes on the motion to override the governor of their party, because these two members want that map passed. This is a good map for them.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this will be very interesting.
So that would be bipartisanship.
I know.
So many people always want.
They always talk about it. Let's see if we can make it happen. Oh, well, we'll definitely. This is very interesting. Thanks for joining us this afternoon and giving us the update on
this. Real quick, if you haven't seen the commandant of the Naval Academy speech to the midshipmen last night, it's all over YouTube. We're going to be posting it on my Facebook page. It's being tweeted around. Have you seen it yet?
I have a link pulled up right here. I'm going to send it to Kane and we're going to play it. We have a U.S. Naval
magnificent piece.
Cadet celebrating. Great. Thanks so much, Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you. All right, folks, we have your call.